I'm Ashley, 32 years old, and a corporate lawyer at one of Boston's top firms. My younger sister Kimberly and I were inseparable growing up, which made what happened at her wedding even more devastating. There I was, giving my maid of honor speech to 200 guests when Kimberly stormed onto the stage, slapped me hard across the face, and accused me of trying to ruin her special day. What nobody realized was that this betrayal went far deeper than a simple family disagreement. Before I share this painful story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit subscribe, and brace yourself for a wedding disaster that changed our family forever. Growing up, I always felt responsible for Kimberly. Being 3 years older, I was the one who walked her to school, helped with homework, and scared away the kids who tried to bully her. Our bedroom was split down the middle. My side neat and organized with books and debate trophies, her side colorful and chaotic with art supplies and fashion magazines. Despite our differences, we shared secrets, clothes, and dreams. Our parents ran a successful real estate business, which meant long hours and high expectations, particularly for me as the firstborn. Ashley, you need to set an example, became their mantra. When I brought home an A-, there were discussions about applying myself more, while Kimberly's BS were celebrated with ice cream. I never resented this difference, though. Kimberly had a creativity and social ease I admired but could never quite master. In high school, our paths diverged further. I was student council president, debate team captain, and focused on my pre-law track. Kimberly became the artistic spirit, involved in drama club and yearbook design. She had a new boyfriend every few months, while I dated the same serious-minded guy throughout junior and senior year. Despite our different circles, we remained close. Friday nights were sacred sister time, movies, popcorn, and talking until mom yelled at us to go to sleep. College tested our bond. I went to Northwestern while Kimberly stayed closer to home at the Rhode Island School of Design. During her sophomore year, Kimberly called me at 3 a.m. sobbing. Her boyfriend had cheated on her with her roommate, and she was failing 2 classes. I drove 6 hours through the night to be with her, helped her move to a new apartment, and stayed for a week organizing her assignments. My own midterm suffered, but seeing her back on her feet was worth it. "You're always saving me, Ash," she had said. "Someday I'll find a way to repay you." After graduation, our lives took predictable turns. I went to law school, then joined a prestigious firm with grueling 80-hour work weeks. Kimberly bounced between graphic design jobs, always finding her bosses too controlling, or the work too corporate. She lived in a cute apartment with constantly changing roommates, while I purchased a sensible condo close to my office. The first signs of trouble emerged during family gatherings. When I received a promotion at 30, Kimberly's congratulations felt forced. "Must be nice having everything figured out," she commented, swirling her wine glass. "Some of us are still trying to find our way." I brushed it off, attributing her reaction to a recent job loss. Then came James. Kimberly met him at a gallery opening I had invited her to as my +1. My firm represented the artist, and I couldn't attend alone. James was charming, with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch. He claimed to be an investment consultant, though his explanation of his work seemed deliberately vague. When Kimberly wasn't looking, I caught him checking price tags on sculptures and calculating tips with suspicious precision. "He's perfect," Kimberly gushed on our ride home. "And he thinks I'm amazing. Did you see how he couldn't take his eyes off me?" "He seems nice," I replied cautiously. "Just take your time getting to know him." "Not everyone overthinks everything like you do, Ashley," she had said, her tone suddenly sharp. "Sometimes you just know." Over the next few months, James became a fixture at family dinners. He charmed our parents with stories about wealthy clients and exotic business trips. Mom was particularly impressed by his knowledge of wines and his promise to find them an exclusive vacation property through his connections. Dad, normally skeptical of Kimberly's boyfriends, was won over when James claimed to be a former college baseball player. Only I seemed to notice the inconsistencies. James once mentioned growing up in Seattle, then later referred to his childhood home in Chicago. He said he graduated from Wharton, but seemed unfamiliar with campus landmarks when I mentioned a case competition I'd attended there. Whenever I asked specific questions about his work, he would deflect with industry jargon or change the subject entirely. "Your sister's boyfriend gives me weird vibes," Rebecca, my childhood friend, commented after meeting him at my birthday dinner. "He keeps name-dropping, but something feels rehearsed." I nodded, relieved someone else noticed. "I've tried mentioning it to Kim, but she thinks I'm being overprotective." "Be careful," Rebecca warned. "People in love don't always want to hear the truth." Those words would prove prophetic in ways I couldn't imagine. The engagement announcement came just 11 months after they'd met. Kimberly called at midnight, her voice breathless with excitement. He proposed on the rooftop of the Mandarin Oriental, with champagne and roses everywhere. "I'm getting married, Ash." My stomach tightened, but I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's amazing, Kim. I'm so happy for you. Have you thought about dates yet?" "We're thinking October, just 6 months away." "James says, why wait when you've found your soulmate?" "And Ashley," her voice softened, "will you be my maid of honor? I can't imagine anyone else standing beside me." Despite my reservations, tears filled my eyes. "Of course I will. I'd be honored." I threw myself into maid of honor duties with the same dedication I gave to legal cases. I created spreadsheets for vendor comparisons, organized bridal shower games, and researched bachelorette destinations that would accommodate everyone's budgets. My assistant at work started calling it the wedding case. The first real conflict erupted during dress shopping. Kimberly had chosen a high-end boutique where the starting price for gowns was $5,000. Mom and Dad agreed to contribute, but this seems excessive, I suggested gently. "There are beautiful dresses at half this price." Kimberly's face darkened. "Of course you'd say that. Not everyone wants to look like they're heading to a business meeting on their wedding day." "That's not what I meant. Just because you're still single and saving for retirement at 30 doesn't mean I have to live like that. James says I deserve the best." The comment stung, but I let it go. Similar incidents followed. Kimberly criticized my conservative dress choices. "You could try showing some skin occasionally. My work schedule, no wonder you're single. You're married to your job. And even my hair, have you considered highlights? You look washed out." Meanwhile, James became increasingly cold toward me when Kimberly wasn't watching. At the engagement party, I overheard him on the phone in the hallway, arguing about payment terms and mentioning high interest. When he spotted me, he abruptly ended the call and gave me a tight smile. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just business. Nothing a lawyer would find interesting." His tone was dismissive. "By the way, Kimberly tells me you've been questioning some of our wedding choices." "I'm just trying to help her stay within budget." "I think you're jealous," he said bluntly. "Kim's found happiness while you're still alone. Maybe focus on your own life instead of micromanaging hers." I walked away, shocked by his directness. Later that week, my suspicions compelled me to do something I'm not proud of. Using my firm's resources, I ran a background check on James. The initial results were concerning enough that I dug deeper. James Miller wasn't his original name. He had legally changed it 5 years ago from James Moretti. He had no degree from Wharton or any college. Most alarmingly, he had a string of maxed-out credit cards and a previous bankruptcy filing. His investment firm appeared to be little more than a website with stock photos and vague services. I deliberated for days about what to do with this information. The wedding was now just 3 weeks away. Invitations had been sent, deposits paid, Kimberly's expensive dress altered to perfection. Revealing the truth would devastate her, but letting her marry a liar seemed worse. The final straw came when our mother called, concerned about a large check she and Dad had written to help with wedding expenses, which James had insisted on handling personally. "Has Kimberly mentioned their honeymoon plans?" I asked carefully. "James says it's a surprise for everyone, even Kim. Something about a private villa his client is lending them." My heart sank. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture was ugly. The week before the wedding, I discovered something that made my previous findings seem minor. Through a colleague who specialized in gambling law, I learned that James had accumulated over $50,000 in debt with several casinos in Atlantic City. He had been banned from 2 establishments for failure to pay. This wasn't just about lying on a resume or exaggerating his success. James had a serious gambling addiction and was clearly using my sister and family to fund it. My colleague also provided documents showing James had been fired from his last legitimate job at an insurance company for misappropriation of client funds. He was not only unemployed but potentially facing criminal charges if former clients pursued legal action. That night, I did something impulsive. I called James directly. "We need to talk about what I found," I said when he answered. "About your gambling debts and your real employment history." The charming facade dropped instantly. "You had no right to investigate me. I had every right to protect my sister." "Listen carefully," his voice turned threatening. "If you say anything to Kimberly or your parents, I'll make sure she never speaks to you again. I'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable from work stress and jealousy." Who do you think they'll believe? The guy who makes Kimberly happier than she's ever been, or her competitive sister who's always correcting her? "They'll believe evidence," I countered, but my confidence wavered. "Stay out of it, Ashley. Some people might appreciate your controlling nature, but Kimberly and I aren't among them." He hung up, leaving me shaking. For 2 days, I wrestled with my conscience. Finally, 3 days before the wedding, I drove to Kimberly's apartment with a folder of documents. She greeted me with a hug, surrounded by wedding favors she was assembling. "Thank goodness you're here. I need help tying these ribbons. Kim, we need to talk about something important first." Her smile faded as I placed the folder on her coffee table. "What's this?" "Information about James that you need to see before Saturday." As she flipped through the pages, her expression shifted from confusion to anger. "You investigated my fiancé? What is wrong with you?" I had concerns, and they were justified. "He's not who he says he is." "Because he changed his name? Lots of people do that." "He's in massive gambling debt. He has no real job. The investment firm doesn't exist beyond a website. And I think he's using the wedding money from Mom and Dad for something other than vendors." Kimberly stood up, scattering papers. "You've always done this. You can't stand that I'm happy and successful at something you're not. This has nothing to do with. You've always tried to overshadow me," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "When I got into art school, you had to point out the scholarship you got to Northwestern. When I started dating James, you immediately questioned his job. And now that I'm getting married before you, you can't stand it." The accusation felt like a physical blow. "Kim, that's not true. I've only wanted what's best for you. What's best according to Ashley, right? Because you always know better than everyone else." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling Mom and Dad. They need to know how you're trying to ruin my wedding." Our parents arrived 30 minutes later to find us in the same standoff. Mom took one look at the scattered papers and sighed. "Ashley, what have you done now?" I tried explaining, showing them the evidence, but Dad cut me off. 3 days before the wedding? Even if there's some truth here, your timing is terrible." Mom put her arm around Kimberly, who was still crying. "Weddings are stressful for everyone. Ashley, maybe you're transferring your work anxiety onto this situation." "This isn't anxiety. It's facts. Are you all blind?" Dad pulled me aside while Mom comforted Kimberly. "Look, we appreciate that you care, but Kimberly is an adult. We have to let her make her own choices, even mistakes. Even when those mistakes could cost her everything. She loves him, Ashley. And right now, she needs her sister's support, not judgment." I looked over at Kimberly, who refused to meet my eyes. The distance between us felt insurmountable. "Will you still be my maid of honor?" she finally asked, her voice small. "I need you there, even if you don't approve." Despite everything, she was still my little sister. "Of course I will." As I left, Mom followed me to my car. "Try to put this behind you for the wedding. For Kimberly's sake." And after the wedding, when he's spent all her money and broken her heart, Mom looked tired. "Then we'll be there to help her pick up the pieces." That's what family does. I drove home feeling utterly alone, the folder of evidence beside me now seeming useless. The morning of the wedding dawned with picture-perfect October weather. I arrived at the hotel suite where the bridal party was getting ready, arms full of emergency supplies, fashion tape, extra hairpins, stain remover, and Advil. Kimberly was surrounded by bridesmaids, her makeup artist working on her face. When she saw me, she gave a tight smile. "You're late." I checked my watch. "I'm actually 10 minutes early. Everyone else has been here since 7. I bit back a retort. Today wasn't about being right. One of the bridesmaids, sensing tension, quickly handed me a mimosa and guided me to the hair stylist. Throughout the morning, Kimberly alternated between ignoring me completely and making passive-aggressive comments. When the photographer asked for sister photos, she complained that my Navy maid of honor dress was too corporate and pulling focus from her gown. When I helped adjust her veil, she flinched away as if my touch bothered her. "Your nails look nice," I offered, trying to build a bridge. The French tip was a good choice. "James suggested it," she replied curtly. "He has excellent taste." The ceremony was set in a historic mansion with gardens overlooking the harbor. 200 guests filled white chairs on the manicured lawn. James stood at the altar looking impeccable in his tuxedo, though I noticed him wiping sweat from his brow repeatedly. As we lined up for the processional, I squeezed Kimberly's hand. "You look beautiful." For a moment, her face softened. "Thanks, Ash." Walking down the aisle ahead of her, I pushed my concerns aside. The setting was magical, rose petals scattered along the path, string quartet playing softly, golden autumn light casting everything in a warm glow. When our father escorted Kimberly toward James, genuine tears filled my eyes. Despite everything, I wanted this moment to be as perfect as she'd dreamed. The ceremony itself was brief, but touching. Kimberly's voice shook slightly as she recited her vows. James performed his part flawlessly, though I caught him checking his watch once when the officiant was speaking. As they exchanged rings, I silently prayed I was wrong about him. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and the crowd erupted in applause. The cocktail hour and dinner went smoothly. I made small talk with relatives, dodged questions about my own love life, and kept my professional smile firmly in place. The reception venue sparkled with thousands of fairy lights and centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas. Kimberly had clearly spent every penny of the budget, and the result was admittedly stunning. I was seated at the head table, picking at my salmon while reviewing my maid of honor speech in my head. I'd rewritten it dozens of times in the past few days, removing any hint of my reservations. What remained was a collection of childhood memories and wishes for their happiness. Whatever came after today, at least I wouldn't have ruined her wedding. When the DJ called me up for the speech, I smoothed my dress and approached the microphone. 200 faces turned toward me expectantly. For those who don't know me, I'm Ashley, Kimberly's big sister, and today, her very proud maid of honor. My voice came out steadier than I felt. When we were little, Kimberly used to say she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. The irony is that as we've gotten older, I've often wished I could be more like her, fearless, creative, and able to light up any room she enters. I shared anecdotes about our childhood, Kimberly's disastrous attempt to cut my hair, our lemonade stand that turned into a mud pie business after a rainstorm, staying up all night talking about our futures. The crowd laughed at all the right moments, and I could see Kimberly's expression softening. "Kimberly has always followed her heart," I continued, which led her to James. I turned toward the groom, and something in his expression made me pause. He was staring at me with naked hostility, his jaw clenched. That momentary hesitation was all it took. Before I could continue, Kimberly was suddenly beside me, grabbing the microphone. "That's enough," she hissed, then turned to the stunned crowd. "My sister thinks she knows everything about everyone." What she was about to say is that she doesn't approve of my choice to marry James. "Kim, that's not." The slap came out of nowhere, her palm connecting with my cheek with enough force to snap my head sideways. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom. You would ruin the happiest day of my life with your jealousy, she shouted, her voice breaking. You couldn't stand that for once. Something was about me instead of perfect Ashley. I stood frozen, my cheek burning, as 200 guests witnessed my humiliation. James appeared beside Kimberly, putting his arm around her protectively while giving me a look of smug satisfaction. I think you should leave, he said loudly enough for the front tables to hear. In that moment, I couldn't have formed words if I tried. I walked off the stage on shaky legs, past shocked relatives and friends, not looking at anyone. As I reached the exit, I heard the DJ awkwardly announce, "Let's get the party started." As music began playing. Outside in the parking lot, tears finally came. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, who had witnessed everything. "I'm so sorry. That was horrible. Call me when you're ready to talk." Not a single text from my parents. I drove home in my fancy dress, mascara streaking down my face, my sister's handprints still warm on my cheek. For 2 weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. I took sick leave from work for the first time in my career, unable to face client meetings with my usual confidence. I ignored calls from relatives wanting gossip about the wedding incident. My parents left one voicemail saying they were disappointed in how things turned out and that they'd talk when things settled down. They were accompanying Kimberly and James on their honeymoon as a wedding gift, a cruise I knew my father couldn't really afford. Rebecca brought me soup and sat with me through evenings when I alternated between tears and angry monologues. I was only trying to protect her. I kept saying, "Why couldn't anyone see that?" "People believe what they want to believe," Rebecca responded, "especially about love." On day 16 of my self-imposed isolation, I received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Ashley Wilson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Lauren Donahue. You don't know me, but I'm James Miller's ex-girlfriend." Or James Moretti, as I knew him. My heart raced. "How did you find me?" "I saw a wedding announcement in the Boston Globe. I recognized him immediately, despite the name change. I've been trying to work up the courage to call." She paused. "We should meet in person. There's a lot you need to know." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe the next day. Lauren was petite with wary eyes and a nervous habit of twisting her wedding ring, not from James, she explained quickly, but from her current husband. "I dated James for 14 months, she began after ordering coffee. "He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. He proposed with a gorgeous ring. We planned an expensive wedding. 3 weeks before the date, I discovered he'd emptied our joint savings account of $22,000. My stomach dropped. What happened? When I confronted him, he claimed he'd made a bad investment but would fix everything. I believed him until his other lies started unraveling. The job at a hedge fund? Fabricated. The wealthy family? Non-existent. The Harvard degree? Never happened." She pulled out a folder eerily similar to the one I'd shown Kimberly. "After I broke things off, I learned about 2 other women before me. Same pattern. Whirlwind romance, financial entanglement, disappearing money. He's not just a con man, Ashley. He enjoys the process, making women fall for him, turning them against their support systems, then taking everything. I tried to warn my sister," I said quietly. "Nobody believed me." Lauren nodded grimly. "That's his specialty. He isolates his targets." She slid several papers across the table. "These are records of his previous identity, police reports I filed, and statements from other victims. I was too embarrassed to pursue charges at the time, which I regret. But it might help your sister when—" She hesitated. "When she realizes what's happening." "If she realizes," I corrected. "She's currently on a cruise with him and our parents." Lauren's expression turned alarmed. "Your parents too? Ashley, you need to check their accounts immediately. James doesn't waste time." That afternoon, I called my mother under the pretense of a casual check-in. "How's the cruise?" "Wonderful. James arranged everything beautifully. We have the suite next to theirs." "That's great," I said carefully. "Hey, did Dad mention if that check went through for the caterer?" "The final payment." "Oh, yes. James handled all that. He even asked for an additional contribution toward their new condo down payment. Your father was happy to help, said it made up for how you behaved at the reception. I closed my eyes, fighting rising panic. How much, Mom? Ashley, that's between your father and them.
How
Much. She sighed. 30,000. But it's a loan, not a gift. After hanging up, I immediately contacted my parents' financial advisor, with whom I'd been added as an emergency contact years ago. My worst fears were confirmed. My father had taken out a home equity loan to provide the money. That same day, my law firm colleague called with news. That tip about the casinos paid off. I found surveillance footage of your brother-in-law at 3 different Atlantic City locations last month. He wasn't alone either. He was with a man named Vincent Caruso, who has known connections to loan sharks. When I tried calling Kimberly's cell, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound casual, asking her to call me back about an important document that came to the house. No response came until 3 days later, not from Kimberly, but from my mother. Your sister's phone was stolen on the cruise, she explained, sounding strained. Some issue with international charges. We're flying home tomorrow instead of staying the extra week. James had an emergency come up. What kind of emergency? Business-related, she replied vaguely. Ashley, I need to go. We'll talk when we're home. I hung up and immediately called my bank. I need to open a new account and transfer funds from my main savings immediately. Something told me I'd need every dollar available to help clean up what was coming. Almost 3 months passed before I heard directly from Kimberly. I had sent texts, emails, even a handwritten letter apologizing for the wedding speech incident while carefully avoiding any mention of James. All went unanswered. Then, at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, my doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole to see Kimberly standing there, mascara streaking her face, hair disheveled. When I opened the door, she collapsed into my arms. You were right, she sobbed. About everything. I guided her to the couch, made tea, and waited while she cried herself into hiccuping breaths. Finally, she looked up with swollen eyes. He's gone. With everything. The story emerged in painful fragments. After returning from the abbreviated honeymoon, James had convinced Kimberly to combine all their finances. He'd suggested selling her car to avoid unnecessary payments and adding him to her credit cards for emergencies. The wedding gifts, all the checks, he said he was depositing them into our joint account for the down payment, she explained. But there was never any condo. He was just gathering it all. 3 days ago, she'd come home from a freelance job to find their apartment stripped of valuables, her laptop, jewelry, even the expensive wedding gifts. All bank accounts emptied. Credit cards maxed out with cash advances. He left a note, she said, pulling a crumpled paper from her purse. Thanks for the memories. Don't try to find me. Like it was a summer fling, not a marriage. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady. Have you filed a police report? She nodded. Yesterday. They said because we were married and he had authorized access to the accounts, it's complicated. Maybe fraud, but difficult to prove criminal intent. Fresh tears spilled. Mom and Dad's money is gone too. The loan they took out, $30,000, just gone. What about the honeymoon cruise? Who paid for that? There was no cruise package, she admitted. We stayed 3 nights in Miami, then James claimed the rest of the trip was canceled due to overbooking. He got a refund sent to his personal account. Mom and Dad never suspected anything because we all flew back together. I fought back the urge to say, I told you so. Instead, I asked, what do you need from me? Help, she whispered. I don't know what to do. I have nothing left. Not even my dignity. She touched my cheek gently. I slapped you in front of everyone.
How can you even look at me?
You're my sister, I said simply. We'll figure this out together. The next morning, I took a rare personal day, and we began the painful process of damage control. We filed additional police reports, contacted credit bureaus, and began the paperwork for an annulment based on fraud. I called in favors from colleagues who specialized in financial crimes and identity theft. Through our investigation, we discovered James had already moved on. A woman in Philadelphia had reported meeting a Julian Martinez, whose description and photos matched James perfectly. He had already taken her for $8,000 in investment opportunities. 2 weeks into our recovery efforts, we received an unexpected break. James had made a critical mistake. He'd used Kimberly's laptop to access accounts before taking it, and the browser had saved login information for an email address we didn't recognize. With help from my firm's cybersecurity expert, we were able to access the account remotely. What we found was damning: correspondence with multiple women dating back years, details of previous scams, and most crucially, communications with Vincent Caruso about gambling debts and payment plans that mentioned specific dates and locations. This is enough for a fraud case, my colleague confirmed. Maybe not guaranteed, but strong. Armed with this evidence, we arranged a meeting with our parents to explain everything. Dad looked 10 years older than when I'd last seen him, the strain of financial loss evident in the new lines on his face. "We should have listened to you," he said, reviewing the documents. "I was so focused on giving Kimberly her dream wedding that I ignored the warning signs." Mom reached for my hand. "Can you ever forgive us for taking his side?" Before I could answer, Kimberly's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She put it on speaker. "Hello, Kimberly." James's smooth voice filled the room. "I think we need to talk about your sister's little investigation. It needs to stop." We all froze, but Kimberly's eyes hardened. "Where are you?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you call off the lawyers and police. It's embarrassing for everyone." "You stole from me and my family," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We were married. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine," he laughed. "Besides, who's going to believe you? The unstable artist who slapped her sister at her own wedding? Everyone already thinks you're emotional and irrational. Your word against mine." I couldn't stay silent. "It's not just her word, James. We have everything: the emails to Caruso, your previous identities, statements from other victims." There was a long pause.
Ashley.
Always the meddling big sister. "You know, Kimberly would have never checked those accounts if you hadn't poisoned her mind against me. You did that yourself when you stole $58,000 from her family," I countered. "This is what's going to happen," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Kimberly will call off the investigation. In exchange, I won't tell everyone about her little breakdown last year, the antidepressants, the time off work." Imagine how our clients would react knowing their designer is mentally unstable.
Kimberly gasped.
I'd had no idea about any breakdown or medication. "That's your leverage? Medical information she shared with you in confidence?" I asked, disgusted. "That's actually another crime to add to your list: medical blackmail." "You always think you're the smartest person in the room, don't you, Ashley?" His tone turned nasty. "Your sister came to me willingly. She wanted what I offered: excitement, passion, a life less boring than yours. Deep down, she knew something wasn't right, but she chose to ignore it because she was desperate to beat you at something." Kimberly's face crumpled, but I squeezed her hand. "We're done being manipulated by you," I said firmly. "The evidence has already been submitted to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Vincent Caruso might also be interested to know you're using his name to authorities." The mention of Caruso changed his tone immediately. "You're bluffing. Check your hidden email. Someone's been accessing it for weeks." I nodded to Kimberly, who ended the call. We sat in stunned silence until Dad spoke up. "What happens now?" "Now we push forward with every legal option," I said. "It won't be quick or easy, but we have enough to build a case." Over the next several months, the truth about James spread through family and friends. Some expressed sympathy, while others couldn't resist saying they'd had suspicions all along. The annulment was granted on grounds of fraud. The FBI located James in Chicago, operating under yet another name, and arrested him for multiple counts of wire fraud and identity theft. The financial recovery was slower. My parents had to refinance their home to manage the loss. Kimberly moved into my spare bedroom while rebuilding her savings and credit. I helped where I could, but made sure she took active steps herself, setting up payment plans, finding steady graphic design work, attending financial literacy classes. "I feel so stupid," she admitted one night over takeout dinner. All the signs were there. "He was a professional con artist," I reminded her. "That's literally his job, making smart people do stupid things." She gave a small smile. "When did you get so forgiving?" "Probably around the time I realized how much I miss my sister." 6 months after James's arrest, Kimberly and I established a new Friday night tradition, cooking dinner together at my place, sharing a bottle of wine, and slowly rebuilding our relationship. The process wasn't always smooth. We had decades of complicated feelings to work through: her jealousy, my controlling tendencies, our different approaches to life. One particularly emotional evening, after finishing a pasta dish we'd managed not to burn, Kimberly formally apologized for the slap. "I've played that moment in my head 1,000 times," she said, staring into her wine glass. "I was so angry, but not really at you. I think deep down I already knew something was wrong with James, and I couldn't bear to face it. I could have handled things differently too," I admitted. "Investigating him behind your back, confronting you days before the wedding. My timing and approach were terrible. But you were right." "Being right isn't always the most important thing," I said, surprising myself with the realization. "I should have found a gentler way, brought my concerns up earlier, maybe focus more on supporting you than proving him wrong." This conversation opened the door to deeper healing. At my suggestion, we started attending family therapy sessions. Mom and Dad joined reluctantly at first, but soon embraced the opportunity to address patterns that had affected us for years. "We did put different pressures on you too," Mom acknowledged in one session. "Ashley, we pushed you to be perfect. Kimberly, we probably let you avoid too many consequences. And we should have taken Ashley's concerns more seriously," Dad added. "We wanted so badly for the wedding to be perfect that we ignored clear warning signs." The therapist helped us develop better communication strategies and boundaries. Kimberly learned to assert herself without defensiveness. I practiced stepping back and listening without immediately offering solutions. Our parents worked on treating us as the adults we'd become. Slowly, the financial wounds healed too. My parents restructured their retirement plans. Kimberly's design business grew steadily as she channeled her experience into her work, attracting clients who appreciated her newfound confidence and professionalism. 1 year after the disastrous wedding, Kimberly started dating again, cautiously this time. Michael was a high school math teacher she met through a friend. With a simple lifestyle and transparent finances, he willingly shared early in their relationship. "He's nothing like James," she told me over coffee. "No flashy promises or whirlwind romance. Just genuine kindness and honesty." "He sounds wonderful," I said sincerely. "I'm taking it slow. We've been dating 3 months, and he still hasn't seen my apartment." She smiled. "But he did pass the Ashley test when you interrogated him at dinner last week." "I did not interrogate him. I asked perfectly normal questions about his teaching philosophy. And his credit score and relationship with his mother," she teased. I laughed, grateful we could joke about it now. Old habits die hard. 2 months later, I was surprised when Kimberly invited me to lunch alone. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her napkin. "Michael asked me to move in with him," she blurted out. "I wanted to get your thoughts before I decide." The old Ashley would have immediately listed pros and cons, checked his lease agreement, and suggested a detailed timeline. Instead, I asked, "What does your heart tell you?" She looked surprised. "That I'm scared but excited. That he's nothing like James, but I'm still afraid of making another mistake." "Those are valid feelings. What would make you feel more secure about the decision?" She considered this. "Maybe a longer timeline? And keeping my own place for a few months as a safety net." "That sounds reasonable. You don't have to rush." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for not telling me what to do. For trusting me to make my own decision." "That's what sisters are for," I replied. supporting each other's choices, even when they're different from what we might choose ourselves. 6 weeks later, Kimberly moved in with Michael, maintaining her own apartment lease for 3 additional months as planned. They established joint expenses while keeping separate accounts, her idea, which made me prouder than I could express. During this time, my own life expanded beyond work and family drama. I started dating a litigation attorney from a neighboring firm, took up hiking on weekends, and even considered a long overdue vacation. At dinner recently, Kimberly raised her glass in a toast to sisters who sometimes slap sense into each other, literally and figuratively. To growth, I countered, and to recognizing that love sometimes means stepping back instead of taking over. And to James, she added unexpectedly, who taught me what I don't want and inadvertently showed me what I truly need. We clinked glasses, our laughter healing the final cracks between us. The public humiliation of being slapped in front of 200 wedding guests has faded into a story we now tell with rueful smiles rather than tears. The lessons, however, remain vivid. Trust your instincts. True love doesn't need to rush, and sometimes the line between protection and interference is razor thin. I still believe truth is more important than keeping peace, but I've learned that how and when you deliver that truth matters deeply. Kimberly has grown to value security and transparency over grand gestures and excitement. And our family has learned that supporting someone doesn't always mean shielding them from potential mistakes. As for James, last we heard, he was serving time for fraud, his charming smile now reserved for prison visitors. Sometimes I wonder if he ever feels remorse for the emotional destruction he caused, or if we were simply characters in his ongoing performance. Has someone you love ever mistaken your protection for interference? Have you ever had to stand by while watching someone make a mistake you couldn't prevent? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to hear more family tales, and hit that notification bell. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives become our greatest teachers. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, love doesn't require perfection, just presence and patience.